I wanted to get this video for you guys so you can see how a podcast is actually supposed to be lit. I see people with so many followers and have so much money, and even professional videographers lighting podcast studios, and they just miss so many rules that are supposed to be done. So this is a pretty small space. So I really want to show you guys how we were able to take it from looking like this to this. Honestly, this setup was a little bit more difficult because we had a smaller place to set up, but we managed to make it work. We had these lights up there. We really had to push them all the way back, get the right angle for the hair light and the key light. Let me know what you guys think in the comments of how it looks. So the rest of this video is gonna be me walking you guys through how we were able to make this happen. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy. All right, so for this entire setup, we're actually gonna be using some Zhun lights. We have super clamps. So right here I have a Moelis G200, which that's gonna be for our main fill light. Then we have some M20Cs that are gonna be our creative lights. We might throw them on the backsplash, do other things. And then we have two Moelis X100s that they're gonna be our main key. They're gonna have soft boxes attached. And then the main part of this entire setup, and the reason why this even works is because we have these poles. So we're not gonna have huge light stands. I wanted this space to be able to be walkable, so you can walk around and you won't have to bump into stands or have to like worry about all that stuff. So these things are incredible. We're just gonna hold them up by tension and use these super clamps to clamp these tiny lights. The reason why we went with Zhun lights, besides the fact that they provided all these lights, is because they're small. So even if they didn't provide them, I would have recommended them to buy them anyways. But they're so small that they can go on these things and I'm not gonna be worrying about it. So yeah, let's get into the setup. All right. Caution fire. There you go. For our key light, or key lights, we have these super clamps. I use them all the time in my personal YouTube setup. Super easy. We're just gonna clamp them to the poles. Again, they're really small lights, so we're able to get away with minimal like weight, minimal setup, minimal everything. Oh, I got it so too high to where that hits that.
Do we need to reset?
We'll do it later if we need to. So we'll work on angles and everything after, even positioning of the lights. But these X100s are gonna be our key. So they're gonna be angled that way. And what these X100s do as a key light, especially, it's called cross lighting, but there's tons of ways to say it. It's gonna light the person that's sitting right here, but it's also gonna give this person a hair light. So it does two things when you do cross key lighting like this. So I just wanna get this zip tied here so that it's not messing up with other things. But we'll probably get like a power strip like running down there or some, I don't know. We'll figure out a place. First off, thank you, Zhun. But since they didn't send the right softbox, yeah, they sent the larger one. So we're gonna try to finesse this a little bit. So we might move the poles forward a little bit and then up some more, just so this isn't in frame. I mean, if we have the key here and they're sitting here, it'll give the backlight and still light the person. Yeah, we'll just figure it out. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna cut into the video because our BTS camera died. But after this part that you're seeing in the video, we spent a ton of time getting these key lights right. And it took so long because we were trying to get the lights to be behind the subject as opposed to just lighting people dead on. And this is a mistake I see people make all the time when they're lighting talking heads, when they're lighting a podcast, talking whatever thing. They are lighting their subjects from the front and not making sure that they're shooting shadow side. I have a whole video on my YouTube channel that I'll link right up here, but making sure that you are shooting shadow side is one of the most important rules that you can keep in mind to get a cinematic image, whether it's a podcast, talking head, whatever shot you could possibly shoot. But specifically for podcasts, people neglect this rule all the time because it's not easy to do. It took us about an hour and a half to actually find the right positioning to get these lights behind our subjects, not be in frame. It was a whole process, but it was worth the hassle. Our image was way more appealing because we had this contrast. We had this this texture to the image, this hair light, all these other things that make an image good, specifically because we put our lights behind our subject, or at least a little bit behind our subject. I'm not saying to make your podcasts and images super moody by having tons of shadows. I'm just saying to have the brightest part of your subject be opposite of where your camera's facing. Equivalent would be to shoot your talking heads in this direction so that the brightest part of the image is opposite of the camera. This isn't that pleasing of an image because we just didn't light it for this, but I'm sure you get the point. You need a boom lights, either have a pole, you need to do all these different things to keep your lights out of frame, but it's worth it. That's enough of this little rant. Let's get back to the video. So this is what we have so far. So we are going to add a lantern softbox for the G200, and that's gonna be our fill. It's gonna give a little bit of light towards the background, but this is what we have right now. Like if I was talking to whomever, this is the kind of look that you will get. We have our hair light, and then we have our key light right there, and the same works for the second person. So John, if you wanna maybe just do like an air squat.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with two people, you could see how he has some light on his face from here, and then he has a hair light from the back, and we'll finagle with it. But this is what we got so far with the setup that we've done.
I like it.
Here we have the G200, which is gonna be our fill light, just to raise some levels in the room, splash a little bit of light on the background. And then we're gonna create color contrast with our M20Cs. We don't have a ton, this is kind of a minimal lighting setup. Normally I would add maybe like some shapes in the background, just some oomph. We'll add that probably in the future, but just for now, we're trying to get it set for the new season of the podcast, which is called Friend of God, if you want to listen to it. It's a really interesting take on sensitive topics that I think need to be talked about way more than they are. So if you are interested, Friend of God, you can find it on YouTube. But yeah, pretty simple. So after we figured out where to position the key lights exactly to where they're not in the frame and they still gave us that nice contrast, we had to figure out the fill light, which that made it so that we didn't have tons of shadows. Then we were just playing around, we're tweaking things, making sure the set looked well. This is probably the second most neglected thing when people set up podcasts, because they set up their space to look cute and they don't think like a videographer. So even if you aren't one and you're watching, try and think this way. You want to have a couple things within your image. You want to have symmetry, you want to have some color contrast, and then you want to have depth. So we created symmetry by putting a wood slat on one side. We had a couple other things on the other side. We needed to keep this balance. We just spread it out so it would be somewhat symmetrical. Then we had color contrast by using practical lights that we already had, which are these nice, beautiful amber Edison bulb kind of things. I thought they looked really good. They splashed some light on the back, but it did create this contrast between the normal neutral key that was more towards the bluish side, and then the amber lights in the background. So you have that visual interest there. And then the last thing that we did, which was a little bit more difficult, was we created depth by adding the plant. We actually spent more time than we wanted to on this, but we fiddled with the fiddle, I guess. It's a fiddly thing. We messed around with the plant and we put it in a position that was barely poking in a frame, so that it created this depth. You don't really notice it too much, but if you look at it now, you'll probably feel it. I don't know. I thought it created some depth to the image. The light fell on it beautifully, and it gave this sense of dimension to the frame. And yeah, so what you're about to see is the big reveal where we show Jenna her new and improved podcast. It's like MTV Cribs without the entire production team, just one camera. So enjoy it, and I'll see you guys back at that podcast studio. Have a seat.
Oh, nice. Wait. Look how cool that looks. Nice. Oh, it looks so serious.
But yeah, that was everything. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, because I know I didn't cover everything, I couldn't go into every like nook and cranny, every detail of how to make this happen, but I'm glad to answer your guys' questions. So feel free to comment them down below. Make sure you subscribe, like, do that whole thing to help this channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.